You don't really think about how thin the walls of your house are, how fragile a window is, until the night you start hearing things you can't explain. I never used to be the kind of person who's scared easily, but lately, sleep hasn't come easily. I keep remembering the quiet knocks, the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel outside my window, and the way the darkness just waited. I'm telling this now because it's happening again. Not the exact same events, but the same feeling. The same cold weight pressing down on my chest whenever the sun goes down. It started weeks ago. A few subtle things at first. A motion light flickering on when no one was there. The dog standing at the back door, growling at nothing but tall grass and an empty yard. Little things you brush off until you can't. The worst part wasn't the sounds, it was the silence afterward. Like whatever was out there knew I heard it and was now listening to me. I started moving quieter in my own home, like I didn't want to wake something up. Some nights, I'd sit in the dark and watch the window across from my bed. There's a street lamp outside. It throws this pale yellow light through the blinds, cutting the dark into thin stripes. And sometimes I swear I'd see a shadow move through it. Slow, deliberate, like someone walking past, but never fully seen. One night, I got up to close the curtains. My hand was just about to touch the fabric when I froze, because for a split second I thought I saw a reflection that wasn't mine, just over my shoulder. Not a clear face, just the shape of someone standing behind me. Too close. I turned around. Nothing, but the air felt colder than before. Since then, the memories I've tried to bury keep surfacing. Stories I heard, things people went through when they realized they weren't as alone as they thought. These weren't stories about ghosts or demons. They were about people, flesh and blood, people who stood too close to bedroom windows in the dark, people who waited on porches long after the doorbell stopped ringing, people who smiled through glass. And the thing is, each story starts the same way, with something small, a knock, a question, a face you're not sure you really saw. And by the time you realize it isn't harmless, it's already too late. There are 3 stories I can't get out of my head. 3 people who met that feeling I'm talking about. That moment when you know someone is out there, watching, waiting for you to make the mistake of opening the door, and their lives were never the same after. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. Maybe speaking about it makes it real again. But if I don't tell someone, if I don't get it out of my head, I'm afraid one night I'll look out that window and finally see them standing there, clear as day, like they've been waiting for me to notice them all along. And I need you to understand, this is only the beginning. I was 12 when it happened. Old enough to think I could handle being home alone, but still young enough to believe that locked doors and drawn curtains meant I was safe. My parents had gone out for the evening, just a few hours, they said, and left me with money to order pizza and a reminder to keep the doors locked. It was early evening, still a dull orange glow outside when I called the pizza place. When the delivery guy arrived, he handed me the box, but before I could close the door, he leaned forward slightly and asked, "Are you home alone?" I froze for a second. His tone wasn't friendly or joking, it was flat, like he genuinely needed to know. I lied and said, "No, my dad's upstairs." He didn't respond, didn't smile. He just stared at me for a second too long before saying, "Have a good night," and walked away. I shut the door, locked it, and tried to shake the weird feeling off. For a while, I forgot about it. I ate, watched TV, and kept glancing at the front window even though I didn't know why. It was around 10 p.m. when things felt different. The house had gotten quiet in that heavy way, like the air thickened. I turned off the TV and headed upstairs to my parents' room because it had a bigger bed and a better view of the driveway. I remember standing by the window looking out. The street was empty. Everything looked normal. I tried to convince myself it was just nerves. Then the doorbell rang. Once. Then again. And again. Sharp, persistent. I assumed my parents forgot their keys, so I ran downstairs. But as I reached the hallway that leads to the front door, something made me stop. They wouldn't ring like that. They'd call me first. The doorbell stopped. Silence. Then 3 slow knocks. My heart started pounding. I backed away from the door without making a sound. No voice, no movement outside. Just the cold feeling that someone was standing there, listening. I turned off the hallway light and crept back upstairs. I was halfway up when the doorbell rang again, harder this time. Longer. I didn't answer. I didn't look out the peephole. I just backed into my parents' bedroom and locked the door. Then quiet. No ringing. No knocking. The kind of silence that hurt my ears. And then I heard it. The sound of the back door handle turning. Very slow. Metal shifting. Not rattling. Just testing. My throat went dry. I crawled to the far corner of the room and hid beside the bed. I remember holding my breath so hard my chest ached. I heard the back door creak open. It was unlocked. I must have forgotten after letting the dog in earlier. Soft, careful footsteps on the kitchen floor. Not boots, not heavy. Someone trying not to be heard. I could tell where they were by the way the floorboards creaked. They moved from the kitchen into the hallway, then to the bottom of the stairs, and then they started climbing. Each step slow, deliberate, carpet muffling most of the sound except for the faintest pressure on the wood beneath. I stared at the bedroom door and prayed the lock would hold. A floorboard outside the room let out a long groan. He was right there. I could see the shadow of feet under the gap. I could hear breathing steady, calm, like he wasn't scared at all. He tried the handle. It clicked against the lock. He didn't force it. He just tried it once. Then again, slight pressure, testing, and then nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, just silence. I stayed there, barely blinking, every muscle locked in place. Minutes passed, or maybe longer, I don't know. Suddenly, from downstairs, I heard a soft creak, then the back door closing. My phone was in my pocket the whole time. I don't know why I didn't use it earlier. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it as I dialed 911. Whispering to the operator, I told her someone was in my house. She told me to stay quiet and stay on the line. When the police finally pulled into the driveway, I could see the red and blue lights reflecting off the bedroom wall. Only then did I unlock the door and run downstairs. They searched the house. The back door was wide open. Muddy footprints on the kitchen tile. A partial handprint on the banister. The front doorbell had smudges, like someone pressing it over and over with wet fingers. One officer asked me questions what I heard, what I saw. I told him everything. He looked at me for a long moment and then asked, "Did he say anything to you earlier? Anything at all?" And I remembered, "Are you home alone?" They never found him. My parents never left me alone again after that. And to this day, every time someone rings the doorbell and I'm not expecting it, I feel 12 again. I grew up in a small house in rural Idaho, far from neighbors, far from streetlights, far from anyone who could hear you if you screamed. At night, the woods felt endless. When the wind stopped, it was so quiet you could hear the house breathing, old wood settling, pipes contracting, the faint hum of the fridge. I used to think the silence was peaceful. Now I know it was just waiting. The first time it happened, I was 17. My parents were away on a weekend trip, and I stayed home to take care of our dog, a big German shepherd named Rocco. It was late, maybe around 1 a.m., when I heard the sound. Tap. Not loud, just a soft metallic tap, like a ring against glass. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was a branch, maybe a bird, but then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. From the kitchen window, Rocco lifted his head from the floor, ears up, a low growl building in his chest. The hair along his spine stood straight. I got up slowly, tiptoed past the kitchen doorway, and peeked from the hallway. There was no one there, just my reflection in the dark glass. I turned off the lights, one by one, until only a faint lamp from the living room was on. The house felt different now, like it wasn't just me and the dog inside it anymore. I stood still and waited. Nothing. After a while, I convinced myself I imagined it and went upstairs. but I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, ears straining, waiting for something to happen again. The next night it did. This time, it wasn't tapping. It was footsteps. Outside. Slow. Crunching over gravel. Rocco was already at the window, teeth bared, a guttural sound rumbling in his throat. I followed his gaze, and I saw him. A man. Standing at the tree line, just far enough that I couldn't make out his face clearly, but close enough that I could see he was smiling. Just standing there, watching the house. He didn't move when I saw him. He didn't hide. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. I yanked the curtains shut and stumbled back. I didn't call the police. I don't know why. Somewhere in my mind I thought, if I ignore it, he'll go away. He didn't. For the next few nights, he returned. Always after midnight. Always just outside the reach of the porch light. Sometimes I'd hear faint laughter, like someone trying not to laugh out loud. Sometimes I'd wake up to Rocco barking at the back door, his paws digging at the wood like he wanted to break through and attack something outside. Then one morning, I walked outside and froze. Footprints, dozens of them, circling the house, around every window, across the porch, by the back door. Bare footprints. Some small, some big, some deep in the mud, others just faint impressions in the dirt. Like someone or several had walked around all night, peering inside. My stomach dropped when I saw the kitchen window. Right in the center of the glass was a perfect handprint. Palm flat, fingers spread, like someone had pressed their hand there and just stood, watching. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with Rocco at my feet, the lights off, the shotgun across my lap. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the noise returned. Not tapping, not footsteps, whispering, right outside the glass. Rocco lunged at the window, barking violently. I stood and shouted. I called the cops, even though I hadn't. For a moment, everything went still. Then, a shadow moved across the window, slow, followed by the softest scrape. Metal against glass. That was a knife. I knew it. Adrenaline took over. I grabbed the shotgun, flung open the front door, and fired a warning shot into the air. The explosion echoed across the woods. Silence. Then I saw him again, standing in the driveway, closer this time. The porch light caught his face pale, thin, eyes wide like he wasn't scared at all. And in his right hand, a kitchen knife. Long, reflective. He smiled, and he took one step backward, then another, still smiling, until he faded into the trees. Gone. The police came 20 minutes later. They looked around, saw the footprints, the handprints, and told me, it's probably just some drifter messing around. They didn't understand. This wasn't a prank. This was someone who enjoyed being seen, who wanted me to know he could get close, so close his breath probably fogged the glass. My parents came home the next morning. I didn't tell them everything, but at night, every night, I double-check the windows. I keep Rocco close. I keep the shotgun loaded, because sometimes, when the wind stops and the trees go quiet, I swear I can hear it again. Tap, tap, tap. It happened 3 years ago, during spring break of my sophomore year of college. A few friends and I, 5 of us in total, decided to rent a cheap cabin deep in the woods of South Carolina. It wasn't one of those cute, polished Airbnb places. This one was old, wooden, no nearby neighbors. The listing said, rustic charm. What it meant was no cell service, creaking floors, and locks that looked older than we were. But it was cheap, and none of us had much money. So we went. The first day was normal. We unpacked, made bad spaghetti, and played cards until late. It was quiet out there, too quiet for some of us, but I kinda liked it. No cars, no sirens, just wind in the trees and frogs by the water. The first strange thing happened that night, around 2 a.m. I woke up to this sound, a faint dragging noise, like someone slowly sliding their hand across the outside wall of the cabin. I held my breath and listened. Then 3 slow knocks on the window. Not loud, but deliberate. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The window was right across from me. There was a thin white curtain, and behind it I saw a shadow. A head. Forehead pressed to the glass. Someone was looking in. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My voice just stopped. Whoever it was didn't move, didn't speak. Just breathed a faint cloud of condensation forming on the glass. I whispered my friend's name. She didn't wake. When I looked back, the shadow was gone. The next morning, I convinced myself I dreamed it, until we walked outside. Footprints, dozens of them. Bare footprints, all around the cabin. Some small, some wide, some right beneath the windows. They circled the entire house like someone had slowly walked in laps around it, over and over, watching. We joked about it at breakfast, said it was probably a prank played by locals, but none of us were laughing. That night, it got worse. We were in the living room, playing music from someone's phone speaker, when we heard it. Tap on the kitchen window. Then again, tap, tap, like fingernails. The guys grabbed flashlights and opened the back door. They shined the light across the yard. Nothing. Just trees and darkness. We locked the door, shut the curtains, and tried to ignore it, but the tapping kept moving, from window to window, like something circling us. We turned off the music. Everyone went quiet. You could hear breathing, not ours. It was coming from outside the living room window. Slow, wet sounding, like someone pressing their face against the glass. One of my friends, Josh, walked over and pulled the curtain back just 2 inches. He froze. His voice came out as a whisper, cracked and terrified. He's right there. We all crowded behind him, and for half a second less, maybe we saw it. A man, face inches from the glass, skin pale, eyes wide, lips curled into a smile that didn't look human. And on the fogged glass right beside his face was a handprint. Long fingers spread like he was petting the window. He didn't run when we saw him. He didn't flinch. He just smiled wider. Then he stepped back and disappeared into the dark. We called 911. They said the main road was 30 minutes away and told us to stay inside. So we waited. Minutes passed. Then something slammed against the back door. Hard. Rocco the dog from the previous story? No. This time it was us. 5 barely adults with 1 fireplace poker and a kitchen knife. The doorknob twisted. Slowly. We pushed a sofa against the door. Someone cried. Someone prayed. Then, silence. Not even wind. 30 minutes felt like hours. When police finally arrived, they found the back door slightly open. The lock was busted. Fresh mud on the floor. Drops of something dark on the tiles. Not enough to be blood. Maybe dirt, maybe something else. They searched the woods. Found nothing. The officer told us to pack our things and leave by morning, as if we planned to stay. Before we left, I walked around the cabin one last time. Every window had smudges, face level, like someone had been staring in. In the dirt beside the house, I found something half buried. A footprint, deep, bare, and facing the cabin like he'd been waiting to be let in. We drove away before sunrise. No one spoke, no one looked back. But even now, when the house goes silent at night, I listen for it. That soft sound, breath against glass. What unsettles me most about these stories isn't the violence, or even the fact that the people in them survived. It's how quietly everything began. A question at the door, a tap on glass, a face where no face should be. You grow up believing your home is a barrier between you and the rest of the world. Walls keep the outside out, windows let light in, not eyes. But now you know that sometimes there's someone standing just beyond the glass, patient, breathing, waiting for you to get tired, to dismiss that sound you heard, to finally close your eyes. Long after these stories ended, The fear didn't. It stayed in the corners of rooms, in the stillness before sleep, in the way people now double-check locks they never used to touch. Because once you've seen someone watching you from the darkness, you can never go back to believing no one is there. And if you've ever felt that same chill, the sense that someone was standing just outside, unseen, then you already understand. Silence doesn't always mean you're alone. Sometimes it just means they haven't knocked yet,